7 children vanished without a trace on the same day, in the same hour, from the same small town, and no one ever figured out how. For 11 years, their names echoed in empty hallways, their faces haunted every missing person's flyer, until one night, they were found, standing in the exact spot where they disappeared, not a day older than when they left. But what they brought back with them should have never returned. If this story kept you on edge, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next chilling mystery. More gripping stories are waiting, real, dark, and unforgettable. The screaming started just after the sirens died out. It was August 3rd, 2014, a Sunday. 4:37 p.m. Greystone, Oregon, a town built around old timber roads and deeper, older secrets. 7 children have been laughing and running through the tall ferns and moss-covered trees near the outskirts of Coldwater Trail. They've been playing a game they made up called Finders Keep, the kind of innocent mischief that kept them out until dusk but always brought them home by dinner. Their backpacks were still lined up neatly by the trailhead. One even had a peanut butter sandwich left untouched, with teeth marks in the crust. But the kids, 7 of them, ages ranging from 6 to 11, were simply gone. No one saw it happen. No one heard a struggle. No blood. No dragging marks. Just vanished. It had taken less than an hour. Maya Jensen was the first to realize something was wrong. Her twin boys, Liam and Noah, weren't home by 5, which was unheard of. They were never late. Maya ran a tight ship, the kind of mother who knew if a sock was missing from a drawer. She dialed the number of Krista Alvarez, whose son Jordan had gone with them. No answer. She tried Alyssa's mom, then Isaac's dad. Within 20 minutes, 6 families were on the phone, checking, pacing, calling the police. One family hadn't even realized their child was gone. Miranda Hart thought her daughter Lily had stayed behind for piano practice. That's how quickly the truth came crashing in. The first officer on the scene, Deputy Carl Rennings, found the backpacks in a clean semicircle, undisturbed. There were no signs of a scuffle, no animal tracks, no footprints going deeper into the woods. The ground was dry. It hadn't rained in 2 weeks. Even the forest floor, normally disturbed by kids running and stomping, was eerily still. The only odd thing was a plastic yellow whistle, hanging from a branch 8 feet high, swaying gently in the breeze. Parents began arriving in a frenzy, their voices overlapping in terror. Maya's face had turned white, her hands trembling as she reached for one of the backpacks, Noah's. It had a Star Wars keychain on the zipper. She clutched it like it might bleed out a clue. Hours became a blur. Flashlights flicked through trees. Police dogs sniffed and searched. Helicopters buzzed low over the canopy as the sun dipped and the shadows lengthened. The woods seemed to press in tighter, like it was keeping something inside, and the children were nowhere. By midnight, the town's emergency alert had gone out. Amber alerts flashed across cell phones. News anchors set up near the trail entrance, whispering phrases like multiple missing minors and possible abduction scenario. But there were no vehicles reported, no sightings, no tire tracks, no witnesses. 7 kids gone, all at once, without a sound. The week that followed shattered everything. Parents slept in sleeping bags near the trail. They wandered with flashlights through darkness so thick it swallowed them whole. Some shouted until their voices gave out. Others wandered off into ravines and had to be pulled back. Volunteers poured in from nearby towns. The FBI arrived. Forensics, thermal imaging, scent tracking, all of it deployed. Nothing. A girl in the next town over falsely confessed to luring them away. Turns out she had a history of mental illness and had never left her house that day. A homeless man living by the river was accused, then cleared. The whispers started. Maybe it was a cult. Maybe human trafficking. Maybe they drowned in the hidden quarry 2 miles east. Divers combed it. Nothing. Days became weeks. Weeks bled into months. Each family unraveled differently. Maya stopped speaking altogether. She'd just sit in her son's bedroom, one hand always resting on Noah's pillow. Krista started walking the perimeter of the woods every morning at 5 a.m. and again at dusk, rain or shine. Her shoes were always muddy, her eyes hollow. Miranda, Lily's mother, had refused to accept it. She continued setting a place for Lily at the dinner table every single night for nearly a year, talking to the empty chair like Lily had just stepped out of the room. Grief did something strange to people. It hardened some, cracked others. Nathan Hargrove, Isaac's father, divorced his wife and moved into an RV parked across from the trailhead. He painted a mural of Isaac on the side of it. Local kids called it the ghost van. The town tried to move on. They built a memorial garden. They named a bench after the seven. But underneath the flowers and candles and fake smiles, everyone knew something awful had happened. Something unnatural. Something that hadn't left a trace. Then, 6 years later, a box appeared. It was June 19th, 2020. 8:14 morgens. Greystone's post office. The box had no return address. Just one line on the front in red ink. They're not gone. Inside were 7 items, each carefully wrapped in faded newspaper. A red hair clip that Lily used to wear. A boy's sneaker, size 3, Liam's brand. A pocket knife engraved with the initials IH. A lock of dark hair tied with a green ribbon. A friendship bracelet made of yellow thread. A Polaroid photo, blurry but unmistakable. A note, scribbled on torn paper. They remember. They all remember. The handwriting looked childlike. Or shaky. Maybe both. For the first time in 6 years, the case reopened. Every detective, every profiler, every analyst that had filed the disappearance away under unsolved was suddenly digging through the old files. The forest was searched again. Surveillance footage from the post office yielded nothing. Whoever dropped that box knew exactly how to avoid being seen. And still, no bodies, no ransom, no demands. No sign of the kids. But the families, they were different now. They weren't just grieving. They were watching everything. Every car, every stranger, every creak of the floorboards. Because that box wasn't just a message. It was a crack in reality. Someone knew something. The media got wind of it and exploded. Talk shows, podcasts, documentaries, conspiracies flourished online. A few people claimed to spot one of the missing kids in a gas station in Nevada. Another claimed a girl who matched Lily's description was seen living with a commune in Idaho. None of it ever panned out. But the fear was back. Thicker now. Heavier. 3 months later, something even worse happened. At 3:06 a.m. on September 28th, Krista Alvarez received a phone call. It came from a number that didn't exist. She answered it, shaking, voice raw from sleep. Static. Then a whisper. Mom. Krista froze. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Jordan. Nothing. Just breathing. Light. Uneven. Then, I don't know where we are. The call dropped. It was traced. Sort of. A signal pinged briefly off a tower on the eastern edge of the state, near an abandoned mining facility closed in 1971. Within hours, the parents were there. Flashlights. Shouting. Digging through collapsed tunnels and rusted steel doors. Police followed. Drones. Scans. But it was all buried. Rubble and dust. And silence. Still, that whisper, Mom, it burned through Krista's mind like a brand. Because it was Jordan's voice. She was sure. The cadence. The panic. Something was out there. Or maybe in there. That was the moment the parents stopped relying on help. They pooled their money. Hired private investigators. Bought old maps. Tracked weather patterns. Dug into every closed facility. Every forgotten basement. Every folklore tale in a 50-mile radius. And bit by bit, they began to uncover something they were never meant to see. Not yet. Not fully. But enough. Because one clue led to another. A property deed with a false name. A tunnel sealed with cement just 2 years prior. Strange frequencies picked up on radio near Coldwater Trail, like someone trying to broadcast a broken signal. Then came the discovery no one could explain. A trail camera set up deep in the woods, motion-triggered with night vision, captured a figure. Small, barefoot, dirty. It moved strangely, like someone not used to their own body. The image was blurry, but the eyes, wide, hollow, terrified. They showed it to Maya. She dropped the frame. Her knees buckled. Then she whispered, "That's Noah." And if it was, he hadn't aged a day. Not even one. They called it the stillness. That's what the investigators started calling the area near where the trail cam caught the image, an unnatural patch of forest east of Coldwater Trail. The trees grew too perfectly straight. No bird sang. No animals stirred. Even the wind seemed to avoid it. You could walk into that part of the woods and suddenly feel like your ears were underwater, like time stopped ticking for just a moment. And for some, it wasn't just a feeling. People got lost there. Experienced hikers, search and rescue teams. They'd walk 100 feet in and end up in the same place they started. One ranger said it was like the compass inside him started spinning. Another described it as stepping between seconds. Whatever it was where the last trace of the children had appeared. And Maya Jensen couldn't stay away. She started coming every day, sometimes sitting cross-legged at the base of a crooked cedar tree, whispering Noah's name over and over, like a prayer she was willing into existence. Other times she stood in silence, watching, waiting, her fingers gripping the locket around her neck so tightly her knuckles bled. The photo was real. The camera had a timestamp. August 1st, 2025, 2 days before the 11-year anniversary of the disappearance. 3:17 nachts. Infrared had caught the figure clearly for just 1.3 seconds. Dirty, emaciated, sunken-eyed, barefoot, and undeniably Noah Jensen. Age, 11. Exactly as he had looked in 2014. People said it had to be a hoax, a child actor, a digitally altered frame. But no one could explain how the footage had never left the memory card, how the camera had been installed only a week prior, and how the boy's face matched the one on missing person flyers down to the faint scar on his left eyebrow. So the search refocused. Tunnels, mines, unmapped structures. Someone dug up a set of utility blueprints from the 1960s that showed a forgotten network of drainage tunnels beneath Greystone. Many of them collapsed or sealed off after a chemical spill in '79. But a few were never documented as closed. A few still had access points, hidden beneath rusted manholes and overgrown storm drains. That's where the new search began. Krista Alvarez was the one who found the first sign. It wasn't a clue, not in the traditional sense. It was a smell, rotting meat, mold, and something chemical like burnt plastic or ozone. It came from a manhole at the edge of the town's old industrial sector. No one had touched it in decades. It took 3 men and a crowbar to get it open. What they found beneath, it wasn't just darkness. It was design. Concrete corridors ran in twisting angles, reinforced with rebar, lined with decaying lights that hadn't flickered in decades. Graffiti marked the walls and symbols no one recognized. Triangles inside circles, lines through eyes, jagged letters that didn't match any known alphabet. And deep inside, they found something worse. A room, perfectly square. No windows. One steel chair bolted to the ground. A camera mounted on a tripod in the corner. A speaker, broken and crackling with static. And on the floor, 7 small handprints, pressed in dust, each with a number written above them in chalk. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They hadn't just vanished. They had been kept, cataloged, numbered. But why? That night, the parents gathered again. Not in a police station, not in a courtroom. In the back of an old mechanic's shop owned by Nathan Hargrove, the one with the ghost mural of his son. Maps were pinned to the walls. Photos, timelines, red string connecting sightings, reports, symbols. It wasn't just about the kids anymore. It was about whatever had taken them. Miranda Hart said at first, the thing everyone was thinking but too afraid to say. What if they're not children anymore? What if something was done to them? The silence after that was colder than any wind. The following week, things escalated. Strange noises in the woods. People hearing whispers. Lights flickering in the houses closest to Coldwater Trail. One volunteer searcher, a local college student named Elise, was found wandering barefoot near the trailhead at dawn. Her skin was ice cold, her eyes wide, unblinking. She couldn't speak for hours. When she finally did, all she said was, "They're under everything." And then she started screaming. The doctors called it a fugue state brought on by stress. But the parents knew better. They'd seen the same look in their own eyes, in their dreams, in the mirrors they stopped trusting. The pressure mounted. The town wanted the case closed. The mayor called it a dangerous obsession, accused the parents of chasing ghosts. But it was too late for denial. Another photograph surfaced, this time from a hunting camera miles away in Deep Ridge Forest. A figure crouched near a stream, skin pale, eyes glowing white from the flash. It wasn't Noah. It was a girl, and it was Lily Hart, still 6 years old. The timeline made no sense. The children hadn't aged. 11 years had passed. Their families had grown older, broken, buried them in their hearts, but they somehow had not changed. The police couldn't explain it. The FBI released a one-sentence statement. Investigation remains ongoing. And then, one night, the children came back, one by one. On the 11th anniversary of the disappearance, August 3rd, 2025, they emerged. Not from the forest, not from the tunnels, from homes, from bathtubs, from closets, from basements. 7 different houses across Greystone. The lights flickered, the air turned cold, and they were just there, choking vet, eyes wide, silent, still children. No one saw them arrive. There were no footprints, no knocks, just the sound of water dripping, and then their names being screamed into the night by stunned, shaking parents. Noah in his old dinosaur pajamas, standing in Maya's kitchen. Lily curled in a blanket chest in Miranda's attic. Isaac sitting on the stairs of Nathan's RV, holding the exact toy car he'd had on the day he vanished. They were exactly as they had been, and none of them remembered a thing. Not where they'd been, not what had happened, not each other. Only fragments, flashes, a red room, a voice-over speaker, a game, the stillness. Doctors were baffled. No signs of malnutrition, no injuries, no psychological trauma beyond what would be expected. But the strangest thing? Their internal clocks were off. Blood tests showed their bodies still thought it was 2014. Like the last 11 years had never passed. Media descended like wolves. The town was surrounded. Parents refused interviews. The children were kept hidden. But whispers leaked about the photographs, the tunnels, the manhole, the symbols. And the real question spread like wildfire. Where had they really been? Because the town was holding its breath, waiting for the children to break. For memories to return. For something dark to slip through the cracks. And then one of them spoke. Jordan Alvarez. He woke screaming on the 3rd night. The sound of static blaring in his ears. He said he dreamed of a room. A cold room, with metal walls and no doors. And a voice crackling through the ceiling. You're now outside time. Do not remember. Do not age. Do not disobey. He didn't remember who else was there. Only a song, played over and over, something warped and slow, like a lullaby dragged through a broken speaker. Maya tried to record Noah's dreams. Each night, he mumbled things in his sleep. Coordinates. Phrases that didn't make sense. The red door has no handle. 7 in, 7 still. Don't let the shadow man see your eyes. Lily began drawing. Circles. Triangles. The same ones from the underground room. One page had a door. Behind it, 7 sets of eyes. All open. And it was Isaac who asked the question that chilled everyone to the bone. If we're back, he whispered, who didn't make it? Because there were only 6 children sleeping in their beds. One was still missing, and no one knew which one. At first, the mistake was dismissed as confusion. Stress. A clerical error in the middle of a miracle. But once the fog of shock began to lift, the parents realized with increasing horror that only 6 children had returned. 6 small faces. 6 tight embraces. 6 families reunited. Not 7. And the names matched. Noah Jensen, Jordan Alvarez, Lily Hart, Isaac Hargrove, Alyssa Monroe, James Dwyer. But not Ella Price. She was the quiet one. The thoughtful girl who used to write short poems on napkins, who always walked behind the others, carrying a notebook no one was allowed to read. Her mother, Christine, hadn't said a word in the hours after the other children returned. She had sat in her silent living room, watching the news reports, a trembling hand to her lips. And as the town celebrated, laughing, crying, disbelieving, Christine's house remained dark. By the next morning, Her silence had become its own kind of scream. When the other parents realized the error, guilt poured in like floodwater. They hadn't noticed. In the blur of emotion, no one had noticed that Christine's phone hadn't rung, that her porch light hadn't come on, that no cameras had pointed to her door. Ella hadn't come home. The police were reluctant to say anything, to mar the victory. But within days, the headlines changed. 6 of 7 missing children reappear. One still unaccounted for. Christine didn't cry. She didn't shout. She didn't beg. She packed a bag, took her husband's revolver from the closet, and walked into the woods alone. They found her 2 days later, unconscious at the base of a ravine, legs broken, eyes wide open, lips repeating the same word over and over. Red. She couldn't say more. Trauma specialists were brought in. They called it psychogenic mutism, but there was something else, something in her eyes. She'd seen something, and it had broken her. Meanwhile, the other 6 children were being kept under close observation. Parents had pulled them from public view. Schools understood. Media crews were blocked at every turn. But isolation couldn't keep the strange things out. Isaac began waking with nosebleeds. Lily began sleepwalking, always stopping to press her ear against walls. Noah developed an aversion to mirrors. He said they lied. Alyssa refused to wear shoes, said the ground told the truth. James stopped talking entirely for 5 days, then suddenly blurted out, "They're still measuring us." And Jordan began to draw something. A room, always the same, square, metal, with a black box in the center, wires running into their arms. He said they'd called it the chamber. Doctors passed it off as trauma echoes, shared delusions. But the more they spoke, the more consistent the details became. The box in the room would hum. It had no wires going in, only out. There was no light source, but everything glowed faintly red. The voice from a speaker was always calm, never angry. Male, female, unclear, almost synthetic. They were told not to ask questions. They were told time would stop hurting. They were told Ella had failed. That word sent a chill through every parent in Greystone. Failed what? On the 12th night after the return, the children all had the same nightmare. At 3:06 a.m., they screamed in unison. Parents rushed into bedrooms. Flashlights fell. Lamps smashed. But it wasn't the noise that disturbed them. It was the silence afterward. The children stood stock still, eyes closed, whispering. All windows are doors. All doors are watches. Time is a throat. It can swallow you whole. The phrase had no context, no meaning, but it was carved, hours later, into the bark of a tree at Coldwater Trail. 12 feet high, burned in, not scratched. The FBI returned. Agents in black suits with thick folders and blank faces. They asked questions about the phrase, the box, the red room, the stillness. They never explained why they were asking. That same week, an old man came forward. Reuben Marks, 87, a retired civil engineer who'd helped map the original Coldwater drainage system back in 1952. He brought out a faded blueprint that even the city didn't have anymore. He pointed to an area marked Void Sector 7. A handwritten note read, "Do not excavate. Acoustic anomaly." He said there had been whispers about that area back in the 60s. A hollow pocket of silence. Workers who went down to pour concrete came back shaking. Tools would vanish. Radios would fuzz out. Once, a man went missing for 2 hours, only to be found weeping and barefoot at the entrance to town, unable to remember his name. The anomaly was directly beneath the current-day Coldwater Trail. The town began to fracture. Some said the kids should be removed, studied, that whatever had happened to them might not be over. Others insisted they were victims, not threats. Old paranoia surged. The children weren't allowed to play together. Some parents watched them sleep with knives under their pillows. Christine Price, still bedridden, still whispering red, began drawing. Page after page. At first, abstract lines. Then more defined shapes. Finally, symbols. One of them was a circle, broken in 4 places. The same one that had appeared on a wall in the underground room, found beneath the manhole. The one no one had shared publicly. The doctors couldn't explain it. They began to monitor her room 24/7. But no one saw her draw. The pages just appeared. Then, One evening, her nurse saw something. A child, pale, vet, standing in the corner of the room, eyes wide. It wasn't Ella, and it wasn't one that returned. The nurse screamed. The figure vanished. When they checked the security footage, the timestamp glitched. For minutes were missing. That's when rumors began to spread. That maybe 7 children had come back. But only 6 had been seen. One hiding, one observing, one unfinished. Footprints began appearing in the Jensen home. Small, muddy prints that didn't match Noah's size. A neighbor reported seeing a face in their attic window. No one was home at the time. And every night at 3:06 a.m., the Jensen house's lights would flicker. The parents began to speak in hushed tones. They knew something had followed the children back. Something that didn't belong in the world they had returned to. A presence. A fragment. A child-shaped echo. The children started drawing it. Lily called it the quiet one. Isaac said he could hear it breathing when everyone else left the room. Jordan refused to sleep in the dark anymore. Noah, one night, pointed to his closet and whispered, "That's where she waits. But she doesn't have eyes now." Maya checked. Nothing was there. But she started locking the closet at night, then putting furniture in front of it, then sleeping in the hallway. In desperation, the parents turned to the one place they hadn't. An old woman named Marta Delling, known locally as the Swamp Witch, a recluse who lived in the woods and claimed to be a medium. She listened to the full story. The red room, the missing time, the numbers, the chamber. Then she said something no one expected. "You tore a hole." No one spoke. A hole in the dark. Something was trapped there. Now it's watching. She scribbled a phrase on a paper and handed it to them. This was written on the floor of the stillness. "Long before your children went missing," it said. 7 keys open the eye, but the eye only weeps once. When asked what it meant, she simply said, "Someone's trying to teach them something, and they're not done." The message was clear. The disappearances weren't random. They were part of a pattern, a process, an experiment. The children had returned too early. Or perhaps not all of them had returned at all. Then, 2 weeks later, Jordan vanished again. No sign of forced entry. No prints. No open doors. Just an empty bed. His drawing. The chamber left on the pillow. And one more note. Lesson incomplete. Retrieval in progress. Tom had started again. But not for everyone. By the time Jordan Alvarez vanished for the second time, no one believed in coincidences anymore. The town of Greystone shut down like a body folding in on itself. School was suspended indefinitely. Half the families along the forest perimeter packed up and moved out overnight. Windows were boarded. Curfews imposed. And still, none of it mattered. Because it wasn't just about children anymore. It was about the hole in the dark. The one they had torn open by refusing to forget. Maya Jensen didn't sleep for 72 hours. She stood outside her son's bedroom, watching him breathe, half expecting him to disappear in the blink of an eye. Lily's parents installed surveillance systems in every room. Isaac's father stopped leaving the house entirely. Alyssa refused to speak above a whisper. The children knew something was coming. The pattern started that same week. Every night at 3:06 a.m., a different household reported electronic glitches. Radios turned on by themselves. Televisions flickered static and shadows. Baby monitors captured garbled speech. One camera, set up in Jordan's empty bedroom, caught something even more disturbing. A shape, not quite human, not quite present. It flickered in and out of frame like bad reception. Small, slender, twitching in a way that suggested movement without muscles. But what chilled investigators most wasn't the shape itself. It was what it left behind. 7 fingerprints, burned into the wood of Jordan's desk. Exactly the same size as his. Christine Price, Ella's mother, came out of her catatonic state that same night. She sat upright in bed and screamed, "It's a copy." Doctors rushed in. She thrashed violently, eyes wide, voice raw with rage, and something else, pure terror. She pointed to the corner of the room and cried, "She's not mine. She's not mine." It's wearing her voice. When they sedated her, she kept whispering under the drugs. The chamber built another that stayed. The theory shattered what little peace remained. That the chamber didn't just preserve the children. It duplicated them. That when the six had returned, only fragments came back. Pieces that looked like their children, that remembered their names, their routines, but not their souls. And Jordan, he may have been taken back not because he failed, but because he began to remember. What he remembered next proved it. 3 days after his disappearance, Maya received a small black box in the mail. No address, no markings. Inside, a cassette tape. She didn't own a player. Few people did anymore. Nathan found one in his RV storage box, blew off the dust, and fed the tape in. A low hum started. Then a child's voice. Jordan's. I remember the game, he said softly. They said we had to be quiet. Still, every time we moved, the red light turned on. When we stopped moving, the voice said good. There was a pause. Ella moved too much. Another pause. She got scared. She kept asking for her mom. The light turned red and stayed red. They came and took her through the black door. We didn't see her again. A scratching sound echoed. Then, they made another her. But it was wrong. It didn't cry right. Didn't sleep. It stared too long. The voice said it wasn't enough. Then they made more. They said they were learning. Click. The tape ended. No one spoke for nearly 10 minutes. That night, the parents met for the last time. There were no FBI agents, no psychologists, no officials, just the 6 families, 7 if you counted Christine, still mute, scribbling symbols that no longer seemed insane. They made a choice. If this process had learned from their children, if it had made copies, then it meant it was still evolving, still trying, still failing. And that meant the real children, if they were still alive, were either trapped or used. Echoes of them had returned, but the originals? They might still be in the chamber. Only one person claimed to know how to reach it. Marta Delling, the swamp witch. When they arrived at her cabin, she was already waiting, sitting on the porch, cross-legged, candlelight dancing behind her. She stared at them all and said only this. You're not ready for the door. Maya stepped forward. Her voice was cracked, hollow, but it held something stronger than fear. Open it anyway. Marta led them into the woods. Not the regular trails. Not the marked ones. They walked for hours, the canopy growing tighter, the air growing heavy, the silence absolute. Eventually, they came to a clearing. At its center, a hole. Not natural, not mechanical. Something in between. Spiraled edges. Perfectly round. Carved into stone. A draft rose from it, cold, dry, like the breath of something ancient and sleeping. Marta lit 7 black candles and placed them in a circle. Then she dropped a silver object into the hole. A child's molar. Lilies from a baby tooth she'd lost the week before. The ground shifted. Once. Twice. Then opened. Not in a dramatic way. Not with fire or wind. Just a slow widening. An invitation. A tunnel revealed itself. Sloped downward. Lined with smooth stone and something else. Etched symbols. Thousands of them. Crawling along the surface like veins. Maya didn't hesitate. She went first. One by one, the parents followed. No one recorded what happened in those tunnels. No one remembers the walk, the steps, the depth. But all agree on what they found at the bottom. A room. Metal. Square. Just like the children had drawn. Red light pulsing. Steady. Rhythmic. In the center, a box. Black. Humming. And beside it, a chair. Inside the chair, Jordan. Alive. Eyes open. Breathing. But behind him, the others. 6 children, all curled in identical chairs. The originals. Ella included. Their bodies were wired into the walls. Not injured. Not decaying. Preserved. Sleeping. The box hissed. Then a voice. Neutral. Familiar. You are early. Process incomplete. Maya ran to Noah's chair. He didn't wake. Neither did any of them. The voice continued. You broke the cycle. The trial must adapt. You are witnesses now. The box pulsed faster. Then stopped. One by one, the children began to stir. Their eyes opened. And they screamed. But not in pain. In memory. Jordan's voice cut through the others. They're not copies. We are. And in that moment, everything shifted. Because it wasn't the real children in the chairs. It was the first copies. The failed ones. The real children had returned weeks ago. What the parents had raised these last weeks were the successes. Perfect replications, identical minds, emotions, souls. But the originals, the ones who had been taken, were being discarded. The chamber had learned to replace rather than return. The families had been mourning the wrong losses. The box began to hum louder. Warning. Panic. Marta shouted. You have to choose. Maya stood between two Noahs. One crying in a chair, one trembling behind her. She looked into both their eyes. Both real. Both hers. One born. One rebuilt. Outside the chamber, the forest trembled. Inside, the light turned white. And then everything went dark. When they woke, they were in the clearing. No ole, no tanel, no chamber, no second children. Just the ones they'd raised since their return. The originals were gone. Marta was gone, too. Later, they found a note in Maya's pocket, scrawled in red ink. A soul divided is still whole, but the world doesn't need two sons. Greystone tried to return to normal. The children grew up. Lily paints now. Beautiful, eerie things. Noah writes poetry, just like Ella once did. Alyssa never wears shoes. And every year on August 3rd, at exactly 3:06 a.m., all six wake up, sit upright, and stare at their windows. No one knows why, but they never speak of it, not even to each other, because deep down they know something is still watching, waiting, and it remembers them all by name. The town of Winden didn't recover the way they imagined. When the children reappeared, it wasn't as though a curse had been lifted. It was more like something unspeakable had been returned. The air remained heavy, stained by the echo of 11 years that no one could erase. Though the faces of the children were familiar, what stared back from their eyes was not. The townspeople tried, at first, to celebrate. A candlelight vigil turned into a reunion parade. Balloons floated, banners waved, cameras flashed, and tears flowed. But beneath the surface of that,